Tree Talking Time is brought to you by Conkeys Outdoors. Get all your hound hunting needs at conkeys.com. Welcome to Tree Talking Time, where we talk all things tree dogs, from the smallest feists to the largest hounds, treating squirrels to bears and everything in between. And from time to time, we might even run a little fast game. Welcome back to another episode of Tree Talking Time. If you are listening to this the week it comes out, it is the week of Autumn Oaks. I will be headed out on Wednesday with my dad. Just make sure you stop by the booth and see us. We'll be somewhere outside in a white tent. We'll have shirts, hats, and stickers available, as well as some stuff from Conkeys. Going to be doing a giveaway Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The winners will receive a subscription to Full Cry. And Thursday, Friday, you will get a gift card to Conkeys. Saturday, you'll be getting a razor strap vest from Conkeys. Like I said, I'm going to have some shirts and hats available and stickers as well. If you are not able to make it to Autumn Oaks and you're interested in my shirts, you can still find them at dusupply.com under the podcast and partners tab. So look forward to seeing everybody there. It's going to be a great time. I can hopefully record some great podcasts while I'm there as well. Until then, enjoy this episode with Larry Case.
I've been wondering, Adam Higginstaller told me he was supposed to send me a copy of that new Hound magazine.
Yeah.
And I got a cur dog story in it.
I got a copy of it.
Well, and I'm like, where the hell is my, and I come just now talking to you. I come back here, this, what I used to call my office. It is so piled up. I mean, it's the office cubbyhole from hell. I mean, it's so stacked up. I can't work here no more. I go in on the dining room table, which is insane when I'm home. And I see Helen brings mail back here when it comes in, and I'm not here, and all this stuff, and there's stuff piled up. And I looked, and I'm like, oh, here's an envelope from OSG.
There's your magazine.
Here's the magazine. So I'm talking too much, and
not at all.
You tell me what to do.
Well, since you started talking about OSG and the new Hound magazine, why don't we get started there? I love print publications. I've written a few articles for a couple of magazines, and I've kind of just dipped my toe into that water, but that's something you have a lot of experience with, so I kind of want to hear about that experience and maybe even pick your brain a little bit about that experience.
I'll talk about whatever you want to, and I know you've seen that I'll talk too much. So, you just tell me who, what, when, where, and
well, let's talk about, like I said, let's talk about your new article in the new Hound magazine. Where did that come from? I mean, I don't think most people expected OSG to put out a Hound magazine.
Well, I would say not. It's, I don't want to call it unorthodox or whatever, but, it's probably not what, dare I say, hip and popular now.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it is. I don't know. But I don't know a whole lot about the origin of it. I first started hearing about it. I'm sure you know Adam Higginstaller, who is he's like the editor-in-chief at for the Game and Fish publications.
Okay.
And I met him way back when he was actually at the NRA pubs at that time, publications. He was at American Hunter, and I got to know him, and we did some stuff. I did some stories for him for American Hunter and whatever. And somewhere back there in the past year or more, he started, making mention of this. They were looking at this, it's a magazine about hunting dogs but not bird dogs and retrievers.
Yeah.
Of which there are a lot.
Hang on one sec. So for the listeners, OSG is Outdoor Sportsman's Group, and they produce
Yeah.
a lot of high-end, very common publications like Gundog and Wildfowl. They are all products of OSG. So
I can't even name them all.
Oh, there's a whole lot more, but I'm just saying from a dog sense, those are the dog ones. They kind of
right. And there's fish and game, and it's everything from guns and ammo to they have a huge umbrella.
Yeah.
And I was really personally glad to hear him start talking about this.
Yeah, definitely.
A hound type tree dog is what I envisioned type magazine, and Adam probably won't mind. He started talking about Hound and all of you Hound guys, of course, and it is a cool name.
Yeah.
But, and I told you before, I've had hounds most of my life, and beagle hounds and coon hounds, but I got into the cur dog thing, and I'm like, hey, man, don't name it Hound, because it's going to have cur dogs and other stuff in it, and that's what, and it's fine. I think people will know it's all these other hunting type dogs. But anyway, and actually another writer that I know who's in that world, he does a lot of stuff. I know you've seen his stuff. His name is Brad Fitzpatrick.
Mm-hmm.
And he's done a bunch of stuff for different magazines. And I've been on a hunt or two, maybe with him.
Okay.
I'm looking in the magazine right there, and there he is.
He's got a couple articles in there.
Yeah, he's got an article here interviewing some breeders. It looks like one of them for the cur dogs is Alan Franklin, and anybody in the cur dog world knows Alan Franklin
definitely
originated the Thunderbred dogs. But anyway, and I'd say Brad was he was scheming with Adam on this project as well, and I just thought it was cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm so glad they came out with this. I hope it's successful. I hope it lasts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something, that we don't hear about as much as their stuff. And to be honest with you, as a side note, I'm flipping through here. I know, and I'm just making a personal note about all of these guys. So Richard Mann got in here, who, I know Richard Mann. He's another West Virginia writer, big gun guy. He's the main. I've known Richard for years. He's the main shooting editor at Field and Stream now.
Oh, wow.
He lives probably 45 minutes from me down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in here because back in his past, he's an old coon hunter,
That's cool.
So Richard Mann's in here, Brad Fitzpatrick, Adam has the article in here, Doug Howlett, another writer, editor who I've known for years. He's got a thing in here on deer dogs, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that do that. I've not done it myself.
It's fun.
Every deer season I say I'm going to go do it, but I haven't.
You need to. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know I need to, but it's cool magazine. Even got an article in there about cur dogs from Larry Case.
Speaking of Larry Case, why don't you introduce yourself, Larry?
Well, I think you and I had this conversation. As much as I talk, it's still hard to talk about myself.
Well, you don't have to just give the people that are listening the Cliff Notes version of who Larry Case is.
Yeah. Well,
you're pretty accomplished.
I don't even know about that, Matt. I'm a West Virginia guy. born and bred here. I'm a hillbilly. I'm proud of the hillbilly. That maybe is a topic for another time, but I do not take offense at that, and I have a whole story about that. But like most kids of my era, I'm a baby boomer, born and raised here. My dad was a hunter and fisherman, so it was very natural for me to follow along. Grew up hunting, lived for it, thought I was going to die if I didn't get to go every time he did. Because of those ties, I guess, raised or that interest. I mean, I was one of those kids that the bug bit early, and we have this whole thing about talking about hunters now and increasing our hunter numbers and getting kids into it. And there's a thing, and I've read about it more than twice. It's, it's just human nature. The bug either bites you or it doesn't.
Yeah.
I take 5 kids hunting for the first time. 2 or 3 or 5 of them maybe really want to go into that lifestyle and others don't. And it's not good or bad. It's just what happened.
Yep.
But I was one that was terrible into it, hunting, fishing, trapping, the whole mess, hunting dogs, coon dogs, rabbit beagles. And I guess because of that, I was one of those kids, which a lot of kids that grow up hunting, I believe, move into this. They naturally, when they hear about what they think it is, they want to be the game warden. They want to be a conservation officer. So I was one of those. That's what I said. The only thing I ever wanted to do, as much as a kid knows.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved into that. Took some criminal justice stuff in school. I actually worked as a guide on New River for the very first whitewater company, which there's a pretty big industry there now.
Yeah.
But when I started, there was one company. I worked there for a while, and I got the call from DNR. I had one day off between the jobs, and I moved in to being a conservation officer, what most people call a game warden.
Yeah. Nice.
And I was just eat up with it. That's what I wanted to do. I lived that pretty much for 36 years.
Mm-hmm.
Probably stayed there too long. How do you gauge that? I don't know. But in the later years of my career, I got through some friends I know. One of my friends that lives right here in town, who's always been around that industry, a guy by the name of Chris Ellis, if you've ever heard of him.
I haven't.
Most people in the industry know him. He had his own PR company, worked with everybody in the industry.
Okay.
And moved in on, and he had Timney Triggers, which you probably know of, and wound up going to work full-time for them. And I was around him several years ago, and the guy I mentioned to you, Richard Mann, who was kind of fledgling outdoor gun rider then. I mean, we're talking going on 20 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And being around people like that, I got around some of these industry hunts, and events for outdoor riders with the department, helping out with those. And I got exposed to the whole mess, really.
Okay.
And there was a world, I mean, I kind of knew about, but not really. If you're a kid, I was a kid laying on the floor reading Fur Fishing Game and Outdoor Life and all that.
Yeah.
And, oh my God, I grew up to be a writer and get paid to do this. And, so anyway, later in my career, I was exposed to some of this and I got around it. So about the time I started got closer to retirement, even though, like most things, I didn't plan it very well. I actually had from a paper here in Beckley, had an editor first come to me and said, "Hey, why don't you think about doing outdoor column for us?"
Nice.
A little weekly outdoor thing. Just, there wasn't any parameters or anything put on it, which is the way I do a weekly gig for about 8 papers now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like to grow that, but I haven't grown it for a while. It's about, I think it goes to about 5 states now.
It's impressive.
And from the start, I said I don't want to be like anybody else's column. Whatever I do, I don't want to be like everybody else. And it's really everything from soup to nuts. It's cur dogs and squirrel hunting and 22 rifles and a lot about shotguns. And I think I told you this earlier when we spoke. Sometimes I slip some what is possibly short stories, outdoor related fiction in on them.
Nice.
And I really like doing that, to be honest with you. It's great freedom doing that. But I've been doing that newspaper gig for a long time. Then I retired in 2014, and I just went at it tooth and nail. I mean, I just pursued it. I don't know what the drive was, but I wanted to be, and I started going to SHOT Show and the NRA yearly convention meetings, and I don't know, man. I just went at it, and I've written for, at one time, not all the time, for most of the magazines that are out there, and that's where I got with Richard and people like Adam Hagenstaller, who's the editor, and a lot of other people, a lot of other editors and people in that world, and it's something.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'm being straight up with you. It's a grind sometimes
I'm
now.
Sure.
Because I totally get in over my head with stuff. My wife keeps saying, "When are you going to tell somebody no?" But I don't, because I'm scared to death they won't call me back.
Yeah. No, that's understandable.
Along with the thing of deadlines and everything, which is really the bad part of any writing, real writers will tell you that. I'm not sure I consider myself that. It's all the people you meet on the trail. You know, I've been to some events and hunts and things, and going to SHOT and meeting people at different gun companies and publishing houses, magazines, and everything. And there's a bunch of great people out there, and I've been very fortunate to cross paths with a lot of those.
Yeah, definitely. So I know we talked when we started. We talked about your article in the new Hound magazine, but you've written other cur and hound related articles for other publications as well. I mean, obviously, like you said, you've done a lot of outdoor writing in general, but you've sprinkled in some tree hounds throughout the stuff. You know, your different things.
I guess I have. I've done squirrel dog related stuff. I did earlier, even a few years ago. I did a squirrel / cur and feist related stuff for Outdoor Life 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
When Andrew McKean was there as an editor. He's a great guy, great editor, great writer, if you know him, and Andrew McKean. I've done some hound stuff, and I think you and I talked about this because you're nice enough to bring it up. I've done a good bit of bear hound stuff because of what we have here. We have a culture, if you will.
Yes, you do.
Of bear hunters right here, what I consider I talk about southern Appalachia, but we're probably in the middle Appalachians. What we have here in West Virginia, to me, the terrain, the hunters, and the people is very similar, if you will. I'm giving you my opinion. It's close to eastern Kentucky, eastern Tennessee, southwestern Virginia.
Yep.
We're all kind of in this crucible here, if you will. And I've written a good bit about the bear hunters and hounds and how they hunt and this culture, really, that they have. It's not I said culture, but I've written about before. It's really a lifestyle.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
With a lot of these guys. And you, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, you know about this, but it's the lifestyle of these guys that are, and I can see them in my head right now. I might mention some of them that, if I called tonight and said, hey, you're running dogs tomorrow. Yeah, we're going. What, you going? And I say, yeah, meet me at 6:00 in Richwood,
Yep.
That's probably what they say. And, this isn't like having a dog or two in your kennel and you get them out 3 times a year and you take them hunting. I mean, they have a large amount of dogs generally. They have a large kennel because they're always bringing something on, and
oh yeah,
the drill. And they're the good ones, the serious ones. They are serious about their conditioning and training and everything, and they're doing something all the time with those dogs. And again, it's just not, I'm going to get him out a couple times a year and go chase a bear. It's a lifestyle, not just I'm a bear hunter.
Yep. No, like I told you the other day when we talked, if it was an option right now in my life, I'd be headed south to West Virginia to live there to be running bear dogs.
Well, we probably got some room for you if that's what you want to do. I probably grew out of that phase, but I can certainly put you in with some guys that do that. And if you ever want to come over, I'm sure there's a seat in the truck if you want to go.
Oh, I know. I'm good friends with quite a few bear hunters, and that's what they all say. They're all like, "Let's go, come on, whenever you want to
go." Right.
And it's like you say that like it's like I don't live 5 or 6 hours from you.
Well, then there's that.
That's the hard part.
Yeah, you're right.
It's not like I can be down there for a day and come home that night.
You're right. It's not a day trip thing, is it?
No.
But they are, for all of their pros and cons, which we all have that, and we're all just human here. They are some of the most enthusiastic and avid. They don't have much of a governor on them. The ones that I know, they're pretty full speed.
Yep. But like we talked the other day, they're probably one of the groups that you probably ran into the most with your career as game warden.
Yeah, I did some, yes. Of course, you got to remember, you and I talked about this. I'm telling on myself. I started in 1978, and we had a lot more coon hunters back then.
Okay, that makes me.
And now. I'm not saying we were ever covered up with them, but I think I mentioned this to you. I know we've got more people now with bear dogs than coon dogs. I never dreamed that we would see that,
okay.
And not that this matters, when I started, when I was a kid coon hunting, and wandering around lost half the time in the middle of the night. We did not have the raccoons we have now. I mean, man, if we treat a coon, we wanted to take a picture and put it in the Charleston Gazette. It was kind of a big deal where I was at. It was southern, south central West Virginia. There were other places that had more coons then. But the coon population now, and you know all this, there's less people with coon dogs, not hardly anybody traps anymore.
Oh, yeah.
We don't think we'll ever see the fur market, like it was. And we got coons everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And, but a lot more people with bear dogs now. And yes, if you're the officer in that area, this is one of the things that's in your job title. And you and I talked about this, and what I did want to get in, and there's no way to say this. Some people's going to take it, wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I get misunderstood a lot. That's one of my great, gifts. Say something and somebody takes it entirely the opposite way. But there are problems with certain bear hunting situations sometimes with the public and with the hounds and the hunters and the officer in the county. That's why you're making the big bucks. You get called to those things.
Yep.
And it's generally what I saw, and I think what I'm seeing now. I try to keep up, in contact with the guys as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I guess early in my career, for 5 years I was stationed in Pocahontas County. If you know West Virginia, it's probably the most wilderness county. 80% of it's national forest. It's big country.
Yep.
And there were a lot of bear hunters there then. It was tradition there then.
Mm-hmm. And
back then, I want to say we thought some of the biggest problems, we didn't have this training season like we have now.
Okay.
And in West Virginia, it is now year round.
Yep.
I mean, 24/7, you can run your coon dog, your bear dog, whatever. I have some thoughts on that. That's not always that popular with the bear hunters, but I just like to be able to discuss it.
Yeah.
But back then, I think we thought some of the biggest problems was, bear hunting out of season, and taking bear out of season. But now I think with the amount of, and I've been retired, and if I'm wrong, I'll admit to it. There's a lot of, clashes, or there were, with the public, as in bear hunters, on private land.
Yep.
And this, and here's the thing about bear hunting with hounds. It takes vast amount of land.
Oh, yeah.
To do that. When you jump a bear, when the hounds get on the trail and the bear gets up running, I mean, he might stay in a small area and go up on a tree, and he may go across 2 counties. And you just, you don't know.
Exactly.
And if you're on, we have a lot of national forest, open land, and they do that. And there's some huge leases in some areas, timber company leases, and the bear hunters, some of them take advantage of that. But sometimes they're going to get onto the private land thing, and that causes some problems sometimes. And, I'm not saying it's end of the world problems, but it is problems sometimes. And what I've said, and the bear hunters that I know that'll listen, they will agree. My thing was they need to, when I say police their own ranks, I mean, be able to talk to the guys in their circle where there might be a problem.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You don't want to hear those complaints about the landowner went out on his land, he went for a hike, or he went to the back 40, and here's a bunch of guys with bear dogs and guns, and they confront him and say, or our dogs came in here and we're going to go wherever we want to, or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's not good for any of us. It's
Correct.
not good for bear hunting with hounds or hunters in general. I might be naive, and some landowners may laugh at me, but I don't believe it's as bad as it used to. It
Okay.
used to be, because some bear hunters are doing what I said, policing their ranks.
Yeah.
But that's just something. I have a whole thing about hunters working together, and I have this thing about hunter unity, which we may talk a little bit about later if you let me. And it's all part of that same speech, in my opinion, where, you know, we got to work together. You know, there's hunters, and there's non-hunters, and there's anti-hunters. And we don't want to make the non-hunters, a lot of people, and you know this, they don't hunt themselves. They don't really care if you do. They don't care what you do, as long as you don't bother them. Well, we don't want to make anti-hunters out of non-hunters.
Exactly. They are a very large majority that,
Yes.
between the anti-hunters and us, and we kind of want to just keep them. They don't need to be a hunter. You don't need to be a hunter. You just need to not be against hunters.
They're very well said. And I want to say this before we get off of it, because I know I'm going to be taken wrong. The part I said about bear hunters, I'm not against bear hunters. I'm not against bear hunting with dogs. I love it. There's guys I like to go with. I cannot and don't want to do it myself because I've got 3 dogs too many right now. And boarding and keeping and everything, as I'm sure you know, is enough to drive you crazy. And I'm all for it. And I very much want it to continue. And because I want it to continue, I want people to wake up to the fact that sometimes people in those circles need to say somebody else, maybe possibly, hey, you need to tone it down in this area right here.
Yeah. And it comes a lot better from your buddy telling you that than the game warden or a landowner. So, if your buddy's like, hey, you got to kind of tone it down a couple notches here because you're just making things worse, that comes a lot better than the game warden coming in telling you to cool it. And then you're just even madder.
And if I could interject this real quick, I believe there's a whole thing with some bear hunting crews or with some hunters. They think that the game warden or officer or whatever they call them in your state, I never mind being called the game warden because we had a thing in my area. We were real game wardens. Okay. We wanted to be the guy that laid in the brush and caught the people they needed to and all that stuff. But game wardens, they're not against bear hunting. They're not against hunting with dogs. They're not against hunting in general. Most of them got into this deal because they were the guy that wanted to hunt all the time and be up in a tree stand and all this other stuff.
Yep.
In my opinion, if they didn't have that bent, they don't need to be doing what they're doing anyway, and that's coming from an old captain who sit on a lot of personnel boards and sometimes expressed that opinion, and which wasn't popular in later years. But they're not the officer is not against that. He just has a job to do. And I'm getting to something real here, and I know I'm talking too much, and I know I told you that I would.
You're not talking too much.
But this thing about the bear hunters and the game wardens in my area, and I'm very proud of this, and I didn't have much to do or anything to do with originating it, but it's the guys really that I work with, in my area, District 4 in West Virginia. And they do now several hunts. They do some things with, there's an acronym right there in front of me, and I can't read. USSA, United Special Sportsmen's Alliance.
Okay.
It specializes in, you can look them up, USSA, and they specialize in Make-A-Wish type hunts.
Yeah.
And it started with young people, generally with life-threatening illnesses, and they started doing bear hunts with them, hound bear hunts. They do it right here in my area every year, and I'm lucky enough that they still invite me to come and tag along and take pictures and write about it. I've written about it several times. And the bear hunters, bear hunters are big on having a group. There's a large group that's several people that hunt together. And this group here that I'm talking about, Greenbrier and Nicholas County, and one of the main leaders of it is a friend of mine, a guy by the name of Kish, K-I-S-H, Justice. He lives at White Sulphur Springs, hunt a lot in Nicholas and Greenbrier County. And he and the officers in this area, led by Sergeant Andy Lyons and Dusty Allen and some of the guys, they work together and put this hunt together. And, it's a big deal, and it's a lot of work to organize all of that. And they generally have two hunters. It's often young people, like I talked about. They've also branched out through this group and done some stuff with the wounded warrior type people, with veterans. And they have been very successful. I mean, these guys, they'll just run themselves on the ground to get these people a bear, and they generally do it every year. And that's an example to me of the officers and the bear hunters working together.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Conkeys Outdoors is proud to be a sponsor of Tree Talking Time. Family, hunting, tradition is the Conkeys motto. They understand the importance of passing down the tradition of hound hunting. They are a family-owned business that treats you like family. They also understand the importance of having the gear you need when you need it. Conkeys carries everything for your next hunt, and it ships to your door quick. They also offer great warranties on all tracking systems and financing options. Check them out at conkeys.com. You can also use the code TreeTalkingTime5 in all caps to save as well. So you've had a very long, successful career as game warden, and now you've been having a very successful career as an outdoor writer.
Well, I guess it depends on who you talk to.
I would say you definitely have. And in your free time, you chase a couple cur dogs, tree and squirrels.
I do. I have one right now. I replaced my original one, really, when I got back into it some years ago. Just, the dog, the one you don't think you'll ever replace. And, as you know, having dogs, none of them live long enough.
Nope.
But I got back into the cur dog thing, and it's similar, as you know, but not the same as hounds. And I'm not going to be able to articulate it very well, but there's just something about that type of dog and that hunting, which to me is squirrel and or coons with a cur dog. A little different than with hounds, not, start barking on a cold trail and run it a long ways before. There's something about me that likes that idea of a silent or almost silent dog, and he gets on that track, and he gets up there and gets right on him before he starts barking. And, which the cur dog guys say, well, if you want the fur, hunt a cur, timeless argument probably between hound and cur guys.
Yep.
But I just like it. I've written about some of their history, the origin of them coming from, the Southern Appalachians, and how they kind of get, to me, they kind of go with that. And now you find them all over.
Oh, yeah.
And it just, I'm not explaining it very well, but that whole genre, culture, whatever the heck it is, it just fascinates me.
No, I agree. I love the history of the cur dogs, and I liked how they formed just out of necessity. It wasn't, the hounds were a specialty dog,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had the bird dogs that were a specialty dog, and then you had these cur dogs that were just a little bit of mixed up of everything.
Yep.
And they did everything.
Yes.
So
I can't explain it, but I just like that there. I see them as kind of from this area, which I am,
mm-hmm.
and they're gritty, and it's not as and believe me, you're not gonna believe this. I've had more than two bird dogs. I used to consider myself when we had grouse,
Mm-hmm.
when we had rough grouse, which I don't think we do now. Personally, back in the day, I had pointers and setters and all that kind of stuff, but it's just different with curs. They're kind of like you said, kind of do everything. I want my cur dog to tree squirrels and a coon. If he trees a possum at night when we're out after coons, I don't really care.
Mm-hmm.
If we had to go in, and I'm really stretching out now, into a barn and needed to do a rat killing, they could do that. You know,
Yeah.
I just like that they're this versatile, uh, gaming dog.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't see people that necessarily use them in a lot of different ways as you used to. But
Right.
But every now and again, you see somebody do something with a cur dog. I've seen them, they just pick something up or they'll learn something. Just more, it's part of someone's life, and they just need to figure it out. And cur dog steps in and figures it out. And I'm not saying other dogs can't do that.
Sure.
I just feel that the curs in general have been bred to be very versatile. And even though we don't necessarily do that very often, they still can fall into those different, that they can kind of find any niche they need to fill.
Yeah. And when I say stuff, and listen, I got a cur dog. I've had a couple of them. I don't consider myself a lifelong expert like some of the guys I could name, like Alan Franklin. And I made a good friend who's in Tennessee, who's big in the cur dog world. His name is Mike Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And he's had at least a couple world champions with his name on them. And Hamilton's Abbey.
Yep.
And there's one called Mighty Mick, who it's getting to be like the famous dog Streak. Everybody has him in his pedigree. But they, like you said, can do, as a side note, you said they could do a little bit of everything. And people would tell me this when I first started with my first dog. They said, once that dog gets to know you and likes you, and you keep him around and become his buddy, and when he really likes you, he's going to do things. And this could be for hounds too. Okay. When I say stuff about a cur, I'm not speaking anything against the hound. Okay. I don't want anybody to think that. But they would, more than a couple guys told me, once they become your dog and they're really loyal to you, they'll do whatever they figure out that pleases you. They want to do that. And I would think to myself, oh, yeah, right. Come on. I mean, I know they're smart dogs, but you know what? It's true.
Oh, yeah.
Very loyal dogs, very loyal to you. And it might take a while.
Oh, yeah.
It might take a while, for them to become, quote, your dog.
Yep.
And I didn't really get that when I first started, but I do now. And because of this taking a while to get to know you, and some curs, I think some of the hound guys and some of the other breeds like feist owners and everything, they'll scoff about curs, about it being too sensitive and whatever. And I think it's that. I'm really stretching out now. It's that sensitivity thing, if you will, of them having this capacity to really bond, with you, the owner. And that, I probably didn't explain that very well, but it's one of the great things, about cur dogs.
I completely understand it. A lot of people listen to this are at least familiar with curs. I mean, my audience knows that I like a cur dog, so you're not the first cur dog guy that's been on here by a long shot.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the guys do understand that, and a lot of guys have said that. That's what makes them different. A hound, a lot of hounds I can unsnap, turn around, hand you the leash, you can unsnap, and guess what? They're going to go tree that coon or tree that bear, whatever they are, whatever they're trained to do. They're going to go do it regardless of who unsnaps the leash.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I won't say a lot of cur dogs. Cur dogs have changed a lot in recent history, but a lot less curs are going to do that.
Yeah. More owner specific, if you will. Yeah.
No,
I would agree with that.
I bought a cur dog. It's been, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 years ago. And that's the way she was when a friend of mine hunted her a couple times with her owner. She treated some coon for him, and I said, buy her. And I said, I'll come out in a couple weeks and I'll get her. Went out there, and she would not hunt. Well, I mean, she would disappear, but she just looked like junk. She slick treed some. She ran all night. I had to run her down and catch her. And,
oh, boy.
And, my buddy's like, I don't know what happened to this dog. It was just because she didn't want to hunt for me.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't know me, so she wasn't going to hunt for me.
Isn't that something?
In about a month, she was fine, and after that, she's the best dog I've ever owned. So.
Oh, so she did come around.
She did come around. She just needed to learn who I was, and
isn't that something?
But that first weekend when I went out and picked her up and hunted her, I was like, "You paid, you gave my hard-earned dollars for this dog." I'm like, I'm not seeing what you told me you saw here.
Yeah,
he felt bad. And he was gonna try and make it right, and I'm like, nah, I'll just take her and hunt her. I told you to buy her.
Well, I'm really glad that you're saying that she came around.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it just took about a month and a half for her to get to know me. And after that, we were fine. Now, granted, she didn't like a pup. She wouldn't hunt real good if I had a young dog with me. But that's just because she didn't like young dogs either. But if you hunted her with good dog, like an older dog that wasn't, following her every step, she'd hunt just fine. Right. And heck, there was nights she looked good against some hounds. So.
And that's and of course, they're very good. That was the word I should have used. Cur dogs can be what you would say quirky.
Yep.
But like all dogs, in my opinion, they're all different.
Oh yeah.
And they all come up different. They all start different. There's a whole thing in the squirrel dog, tree dog world, and I know you know this. You read the ads, and now it's all on Facebook and everything else. Most of these guys, they want to tell you this dog started treeing his own squirrel or coon at 3 months old, and that's what a lot of guys want. And I think a lot of new guys need to guard against that. They get into this and they immediately want their dog, a young dog, a year old or less, to be treeing game. And it doesn't always happen like that.
Yep.
And sometimes it takes a while. And everybody told me this, the trainers and people like Alan Franklin. I talked to Carl Smith, one of the biggest names, had Smith Street, for heaven's sake, icon in the cur dog world. And they all said the same thing. You just got to take them to the woods and let them do their thing. And more than one of them said, every time you go, and you need to go a lot. And every time you go, it could get just a little bit better. It's like this slow increment. And my dog, Dotsy, that I started out with, at first I was just thinking, what is wrong? I wanted her to go out and just run a squirrel up a tree and tree it, and it wasn't like that for quite a while. And she just slowly came along, and boy, after a while, when I finally lost her, I mean, there was no money could have bought her. I mean, she did some tricks. I saw her do some things, and I had her in more things in this whole crazy writing article, going with other writers and editors and on projects and stuff for videos, and I put her in all kinds of terrible pressure.
Yeah.
Too much pressure for a little dog. But here is the guy boring, bragging about his dog. But
nope, not at all.
She never let me down. I mean, she was just something,
How was she bred? Where'd she come from?
Well, she probably had a lot of thunder breeding in her, but not all. She was you see lots and lots of these dogs, these mountain curs that are brindle and white.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how she was pretty tall. She had long legs, and boy, could she move. And, I can see the people's name. There's a lady that does a lot with, they're going to kill me. I can't think of their name. I do this all the time. A fellow in Ohio, I think I saw the original ad on the old Squirrel Dog Central. I'm not even sure if it's still running. Do you know?
I'm not sure. I know probably about a year ago it was.
Okay, and this fellow, a nice guy, and it wasn't too far for me to go, just right across the river from West Virginia. And the lady, oh my Lord, that's awful. I hope she doesn't hear this. But they had a line of dogs, and it came from there. It was mountain curs.
Okay.
And, maybe typical for one of these cur dogs. Started off slow. Now, of course, this is me. I was her owner. Of course, I thought she was wonderful. May not have been a big competition dog. There's a whole world about that.
Oh, yeah.
About a pleasure dog versus a competition dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure this little dog that I've got right now, Abby, she probably came from dogs that were bred for that, but she's smaller. And probably the guy, and I do remember, I made a good friend down in South Carolina, Danny Nichols, and his son Jeremy. You know him?
Mm-hmm.
That's where my dog came from.
Okay.
And Adam Loudon, who I'm sure you know or have heard of.
Adam and Chuck were just on the podcast a couple weeks ago.
They were on your show, and he turned me on to this dog. He said, "Hey, I got a buddy that's got this young dog for sale." And they thought, well, he's just not going to get out as far as these competition dogs need to. She's a smaller dog, maybe even not as loud, which I think she's plenty loud myself. And but that's the thing here, this pleasure dog, competition dog, and flat ground, and then there's here.
Oh, yeah.
And I do not want a squirrel dog where I'm at that will, easily, nothing for them to go 1,000 yards and tree. You don't want that in this country.
I wouldn't.
So she's, so far she's suiting me pretty well.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a picture of Adam in your recent article, right?
Yeah, in the Hound magazine.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure I got. I see Adam's son in there with one of his. I see Adam with a tailgate shot. Got a picture of my old dog Dotsy there, treat. I'm not even sure where that is. That's probably down around the LBL where I was with Kevin Murphy, who's another person that got me. I started going down to see him many years ago, and I've had some good times down there with him. The LBL and a lot of that public land in Western Kentucky.
He's a character.
And Kevin, as you know, he's kind of a institution in his own right.
Mm-hmm.
He has since got with the Meat Eater and some other people, and he's done more than a couple episodes with him, I think. But he's a big squirrel dog guy, Kevin Murphy.
Yep.
Anyway,
now he was probably this past season. He went over to Norway and hunted with a friend of mine, Bear, over there.
Really?
Yeah, he was on my friend Bear's podcast.
Yeah, I knew he was over there. I didn't know he was with somebody that you knew.
Yep. Bear does a podcast for W Hound Supply. And actually, me and Bear kind of started with W at the same time, and then I branched off not long after. So.
Well, good.
But yeah, Bear's a good guy, and it sounded like Kevin had a good time over there.
I'd say Kevin has a good time no matter where he goes.
You are probably right. Like I said, he sounds like he's quite the character. I've never talked to him personally, but just following him on social media.
Hard to describe, but he's something. And I'm sure, maybe you want to do a show with him sometime, because he usually keeps several tree dogs and beagles.
Yeah.
He's into that big as well. I really got into the thing. I knew about it, but I didn't know about it, of being with him and going different places with him, into this swamp rabbit thing.
Yeah.
And Kevin's big on that over there in Western Kentucky and along the Ohio River and on some of those islands and in some of those marshes and stuff. And it is quite a bit different from hunting a regular cottontail.
Oh, I'm sure. I've heard him talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's something. And it's a different rabbit. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I really believed it, but when you put them side by side, they're definitely different and a lot bigger.
Okay. Where can people find more stuff from you?
Well, I don't know. Thank you for asking. I have a website.
Okay.
That I would love for people, my brand and what I do my stuff under, and I picked this up some years ago now, is called Guns and Cornbread.
Okay.
So it's simply www.gunsandcornbread.com, and you can start there if you're so interested. And I have a lot of my stories and articles there, older and new. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible website guy because I don't keep it up all the time like I should. And we keep saying we're going to do better than that. On that, we'll see. I told you before, and it's connected with there. I ran a podcast for some time. I haven't updated it for a while, but there's a connection there. And I want to get back with my podcast guy and get going on that again, which, you and I talked about that. Mm-hmm. And if I could say this, and you're so nice for asking, on the website, and a lot of people in the industry, a lot of people say, Larry, that's just the coolest name for you. They love that, Guns and Cornbread. I write about really anything in the outdoor world, but I do a lot of gun stuff.
Okay.
And I just think, that's one of my big focuses is writing on reviewing guns and everything. I've done quite a bit of that. And the cornbread thing, people seem to like that. and they'll come up to me and say, that's a really cool name and everything. But if I could try to explain it, which I won't do a very good job, there really was, believe it or not, some reasoning by that. To me, it just explains or in some way shows kind of where I'm from.
Yeah.
I'm centered. I've been around a little bit, but I come from and I'm centered here in southern or middle Appalachia. And I'm proud of that and all the good stuff that does come from here and the hunting related culture and everything. And Cornbread was a one word way for me to kind of show that, if you will.
No, I understand.
So we're Guns and Cornbread, and we've been through a couple of different. We have a logo that we use, and people like that. And guess what? We have T-shirts and stuff.
Cool. Well, I'll make sure to put a link in the show notes for anybody that's interested. Check out the show notes, and
I would really appreciate that. And a lot of people have asked about it, and we went through a lot trying to get with a company that would help us with that. And we've got a company right here in West Virginia, Monroe County, West Virginia, that they do a great job of printing the shirts and everything. When you go to the website, I believe that's one of the first things that pops up. And if you want a Guns and Cornbread T-shirt, I think they're going to do hats and hoodies and stickers and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to look at that because Christmas ain't that far away.
No, it's not.
So anyway.
Well, great. Larry, I really appreciate you coming on here. Well,
buddy, I hope you didn't doze off too many times.
Not at all.
Well, I'll be listening in. I know I'm going to become a fan of your podcast, and maybe we'll keep track of each other.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, buddy. Thank you.
You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Tree Talking Media. And until next time, keep them talking in the timber.